Indeed, Jide, I went back a little bit to 2008 to look at the margin, for instance, of victory between McCain and Obama. That was a 2% margin of victory. With these numbers we're looking at here, right now it looks like our last guest talked about Hillary having about 268 of the electoral vote so far, and Trump having about 240 or thereabout. I'm not too sure of the figure again. But what do you think is likely to be the margin in either, whichever way it swings? What do you think is likely to be the margin?
I think the margins will be close, but there's no one on earth right now that can tell you how many Electoral College votes Hillary or Donald has, because the elections haven't been concluded. So all the figures we see right now are forecasted figures based on historical trends and based on where people perceive that both candidates will win, based on various polls. But here's what is more important. What is more important is the polls at the state level rather than the national polls. What is really being shared in the media right now are the national polls, what the majority of the people want. But in the United States, we clearly know that the elections aren't just won by the majority, and that had happened, that's happened in 3 instances. The last of which was in 2000, when even though Al Gore won the majority, Bush had more Electoral College votes than him. So what is more important is to look at how each candidate will win in the Electoral College, but there's still a possibility of even a tie, and it's happened in the United States before, where there was no clear winner. And then what then happens is they then have to go to Congress, and Congress then, the House of Reps then determines who becomes the president, and the Senate then chooses who will become the vice president.
If that works out as we're looking here, the other side will be these numbers are swinging back and forth. The Electoral College that determines who becomes president. Is that something that we can borrow here in Nigeria, and how would that play out considering our numbers?
The major idea of the Electoral College vote is decentralization of power. So you want to be able to say, is the candidate popular among the various states? Here, it will be tough to implement because we are still at the basic of even being able to know who are those that vote. And I'll give you an instance. To be able to implement the Electoral College vote, there has to be a lot of transparency within the system. Without transparency, the system of Electoral College voting will not work. Today, even after we've concluded the elections last year, all we have are untransparent results. And what do I mean by untransparent results? Yes, we know that we had approximately 32 million valid votes. We know how many votes the president had. We know how many votes the former president had. But we still don't have lots of information that makes the entire process transparent. Information such as how many men voted. That information is not in the public. How many women voted? That information is not anywhere in the public. What's the age bracket of those that are voting? Information not in the public. What is the disposition in terms of race, another interest of those that are voting? And that is the first thing that we need to be able to have before we even consider the process of Electoral College voting, because information that is extremely granular gives a lot of confidence to the people, and it makes it more transparent. However, if we keep hoarding information, then we wouldn't even be able to progress with our electoral system.
Now, I'm trying to look at some of this, predictions you're looking at. You just highlighted, for instance, talking about the blue state and the red state, which would tend to give a majority, for instance, the red states to the Republican. And if you look at the way it has gone, and for some analysts, they've looked at this that is almost neck to neck and too close to call. It just might mean something quite different with this electoral vote, which will likely, ultimately, you must have 270 out of the 538. Do you see a situation whereby we'll have a surprise at the end of the day, going by what you've been able to pull together?
If Hillary wins, it will be a surprise to a lot of white Americans. If Donald wins, it will be a surprise to the international community. So whoever wins will be a surprise to a category of people. Donald Trump understands how the Americans, a large population of the Americans are, and he has used that consistently to his advantage. So even though he has a lot of weaknesses, he has used his weaknesses to his advantage. And it makes me easily remember the story of a judo teacher and his students.
I think I'm going to keep that story just after the break, because I love to hear your stories. We'll take a moment now. We'll return shortly and get to hear more from Jide. Our closing moments with Jide, and he was about telling us about a story that we can link with what you've gathered so far.
Okay, yes. The story starts with, it's an interesting thing on why Donald is getting so far with his election, despite his several weaknesses. And so there was a judo teacher that had a new student that wanted to learn how and wanted to find out about the art of judo. The student had one huge weakness, and that was he had no left arm. And so when he started his training, the judo teacher only taught him one style of fighting. Now, after 2 months of teaching him just one style of fighting, he got tired and he asked the judo teacher, "Wouldn't you teach me something else?" And he aggressively told him to master just that one style. Now, the boy mastered the style, and the judo teacher put him into a judo competition. Now, the boy's first fight was extremely tough. He only had one arm, but he kept using this style. He eventually got to the finals. And when people thought he was going to lose, in the last minute, he used just one style to defeat his opponent. Now, when he got back home, he asked his judo teacher that, "Why did you just teach me one style?" And here's what the judo teacher told him. He says, "There's only one way for an opponent to defeat that one style, and the opponent needs to grab his left hand." And here is this boy with his weakness, no left hand. So what it meant was your weakness can become your strength. And that's what Donald has done. His weaknesses of groping, his weaknesses of managing some businesses poorly, are huge weaknesses he's had. But he has consistently used these weaknesses to his strength. And I think whether Donald wins or not is to understand that everyone has weaknesses, and you can use your weakness to your strength.
What a fine place to wrap this up. Babajide Ogunsanwo, Channels TV data and information analyst. It's been nice speaking with you today on the show. And it's almost a wrap. Yes, it's a wrap. And with it said, we have our fine reporters in the United States who will be letting us in on what exactly is happening pretty much later today. Mario Bird and Ayotunde Balogun in D.C., a place where we'll be having just 3 electoral votes. By the way, you know, they don't have a representative in the Congress, but that's where you have about 3 of them. So we have 2 reporters there. And in Faro, Wisconsin, it's Sheon, and in New York, Adeshawa George, and all of them will be letting us in on what is happening. Chamberlain and his team will be here pretty much later, midnight, driving the show till the early hours of the morning to let us in on what is happening, just in case you missed out on anything. Many thanks for being such nice company. I'm Sulaiman Alede.
I'm Nel Taibe. Thank you.
Thank you, Amaokwe Ogun.